Hi there, I'm Alfred Lambermont Weber, and I'm with Jerry Wills. Uh, I'd like to read, just to start off, to read a mantra that Jerry has written. Part of it, he says, I am the image of God finally revealed. Look deep within me and see yourself as I see you. See yourself as I have seen myself, one image of God, perfect and whole. That I am provides a simple yet powerful truth. God lives here. And this is from the Healer's Mantra. Welcome, Jerry, to Exopolitics TV.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you. You know, as I had mentioned, I was sitting at my computer one evening, and Robert Stanley, who's a colleague of mine who keeps track of extraterrestrial or interdimensional vehicles flying over Washington, D.C., suddenly emailed me and said, oh, you've got to watch this. In about 10 minutes, Jerry Wills is coming on. And so I said, okay. And I just turned it on, and I was just transfixed with your lecture in which you talked about your extraterrestrial being. And up until that point, although we share a common, very close friend, Susan Gordon, who I believe is a close friend and also a colleague of yours in the band UFO, and she's been a colleague of mine for the last 10 years, I had no idea that we had that common connection. And so I would feel very honored if you could just share with our audience, as you shared that night, your extraterrestrial being and identity, and unfolding that identity for us, and how you came to know of it, and what the project of the Council of Worlds might be.
Well, the point of origin for me has always been somewhat shrouded in mystery. I've not really known the details. Details were provided to me later in life, but my earliest memories, they certainly didn't correspond to some of the more commonalities that people would have. And basically, it's this. I remember flying across treetops. I remember a woman holding me, singing a song to me to comfort me. It was a language that I don't know or recognize now. I remember being in a place that was very cold. And then the next thing I remember is years later, I'm a couple of years old, and I'm beginning to talk. I'm learning to live here. When I got a little bit older, because as I was growing up, I had no idea there was anything really different about me. It was basically as usual, portrayed to me as anyone else's birth in life. The difference being that I was seeing things other people couldn't see. I was aware of things others weren't aware of. When I got a little bit older, there were opportunities for me to ask questions a little bit more in depth. And always the answers that were given were answers that, you would expect a mother to deliver to her child. My father died when I was 7, so I didn't really have him around to ask. It wasn't until much later in life, really, my late 30s, as I recall, that I had, again, another visitation. And bear in mind, all the time from a very early age up until this time, I was having a visitation occur periodically. After I was 18, it was every 10 years. And it was during one of those 10-year periods that I was given information that suggested that I was adopted, that these weren't my parents, and that there was a much more, a much different story that was going to be related to me. They were concerned for my mental health and my emotional state, and so they wanted to find out how I would manage this if I were to be in a situation where I would discover this information. My contention has always been that it doesn't really matter where you're from. What really matters is who you are and what you're doing with yourself now. After this visitation took place, and they had said that there was going to be a death in the family, my mother, and that it was going to happen within a specific amount of time, which it did. And they also said that once I find out what the details are, it will correspond with what they had told me. And sure enough, I received a phone call from my sister who told me that I had better sit down. She'd overheard some of the men talking, and they had said, "Did Jerry ever know about being adopted?" Well, it was at that point that the conversation continued on, and it was concerning how I had been adopted and that where I was from was a bit of a mystery, that they had gotten me at Fort Knox Army Base, and some of the details surrounding how they came to have me in the family. And so my sister called to tell me about these things. The stories interleaved very well with the things that I'd been told during these contacts. And keep in mind, these contacts, as I said, they've been going on for quite a number of years. So consequently, it was both a liberating and a very confusing time for me. You know, in everyone's life, there is a thread that runs through where you can trace your ancestry backwards, where you feel you have a connection to family and things that are familiar to you. You have this sense that they were familiar to those whom you had spent your life growing up with, that you were moving one life at a time through familiar scenes. But now, here it was that this information was validated to me that this really wasn't my family. And indeed, the information that I had been, that I'd been told by these extraterrestrials, suggested that I wasn't from here at all. Here meaning this world. So it's a rather disconcerting series of events in that regard.
Recording again. Okay, so we were at the point where you were informed that you were not from here, and you found it a disconcerting message.
Well, it was disconcerting because the information, where I was getting it from, it seemed to overlap some things that I had a feeling about myself anyway. I was certainly a lot different than the folks around me. I was seeing things they couldn't see. I was knowing things they couldn't know. And I was just physically different as well. I was over 6 foot tall in the 8th grade.
Wow.
And actually at the end of the 8th grade, I was 6'6". I was physically stronger than any of the other, people in school. And as a result, I was recruited. Not that I wanted to join. I didn't have any interest in sports, but I was recruited to play sports of all kinds. I ended up finally settling on basketball because of my height, because by the time I was in high school, I had gone from 6'6" to 6'7" within just a few months.
Wow.
And other differences, well, I had a photographic memory. I was, by the time I was in high school, I'd already read at least 2 different sets of encyclopedias. I was memorizing the dictionary. I wanted to have a very good vocabulary. I'd been doing second-year college trigonometry when I was in the 8th grade and understanding what I was doing. You know, these were all part and parcel to the continuances of the contact that I was having during that period of my life as well. However, they made it possible for me to have that kind of memory and to be able to show that sort of acumen towards these extraordinary scholarly achievements. Extraordinary for someone my age. I was 12, 13 years old. No one had ever seen anyone do this kind of thing before. So, you know, there were things I was doing that certainly set me apart from everyone else, but it wasn't even figured that there was anything as extraordinary as what I would later find out about myself. And truly, I have no way to prove this. It isn't that I'm trying to extol to the world that, you know, look at me, I'm an extraterrestrial. It's not that at all. I think the more important feature of all of this is that we, as a species here on this world, whether I'm from somewhere else or not, that we all have the ability to go beyond what is considered normal and to achieve things that are otherwise considered inachievable. The fact that I might come from some other place, perhaps it's a statement that these other people would have about the people of this world, that there's a belief that this world can become greater than it's become, and that these people can become greater than they've ever imagined. Instead of focusing on the differences, you see.
Exactly. So you've spoken about your being brought here as an infant as part of a project of what you mentioned as the Council of Worlds. Is this something that you were told in your visitations that's why
Right.
you were here?
Well, what I was told is that there are a number of different societies that are interconnected out there, wherever there is specifically, I couldn't tell you. But there are a number of species who are peaceful and intelligent, and they are striving to become even better than they have been through the things that they've incorporated into their lives. And they also seek to help others who are trying to find that, that pinnacle of a state of being, that all beings, all things can achieve. So this association of sorts, they had at some point in time obviously decided that something was going to happen here on this world within a given amount of time, and that they would try to put something in place to help the people of this world to achieve those greater things, to perhaps develop an understanding beyond what was already understood. And I wasn't the only one who was brought here. There were quite a few who were brought here.